And of course, this is not Brian Fisher. I'm Dr. Gina Loudon. I'm so glad to be with you today. I guess I'm a television host now. I was always a radio host, but I guess I'm a television host now. You can find out more about me by going to drginashow.com, drginashow.com. And I'm glad that you're with me. I love this audience, I have to say, here on AFR Talk. I've subbed in before for Brian Fisher on Focal Point, and I enjoy it very much because this audience is just revved up all the time. And I've got new people asking to follow me on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff. So it makes me happy to be with you today. And I am going to get to your calls, 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. The Association for Psychological Science released a study that says that those on the left, the liberals, they tend to have a false sense of uniqueness, and that we, the conservatives, tend to have a false sense of consensus. We tend to think people agree with us. Liberals tend to think they're the rebels. Conservatives tend to think that most people with common sense probably think what they think, or if it could be explained to them, most people would think what they think. That's what we think. We see this psychological phenomenon repeated in our culture over and over. And to the average conservative, we look over at the left and we say they're cookie cutter copies of each other, don't we? Take political correctness, for example. Leftists subscribe in lockstep, while conservatives, we kind of stand around shaking our heads with thinking they look like a bunch of lemmings ready to jump off a cliff. Leftists see themselves as lonely, noble activists, while conservatives look at them and see copies of copies of copies. Likewise, we tend to think if we just talk about the Constitution, everyone should fall into agreement and all of our problems as a republic will float away like tea in the Boston Harbor. But conservatives have come to learn that no matter how common sense their ideas might seem, not everyone understands or even cares, and this is key, to understand their answers to the problems plaguing this country and this world today. My background is psychology. Way too much education, way too much liberal indoctrination, right? But I know a thing or two about the way things work in the brain. And, it's funny because sometimes when you are a journalist, as I consider myself, you find the most, by accident, by the way, you find the most fascinating interviews right under your nose. And I learned recently that to venture inside the radically liberal, tyranny-endorsing mindset, I only have to go as far as my very own father. Self-made, wealthy man. My father despises my values and my work, and I, to him, am the epitome of his broken dreams. I am his only child, and I disagree with pretty much everything he taught me in my life. But I will say this, or I should say tried to impart to me. But the interesting thing is that I learned so very much from him. His closely held convictions are things like zero population growth, full world endorsement of the United Nations, and abortion on demand. He'd be horrified to learn that it was the long days working in his dental office beside him while we were listening to Paul Harvey that inspired my passion for talk radio and media and the message as it relates to the culture. My dad would hate that. He wouldn't want to know that it was my years of being challenged constantly to debate him on every subject that made me confident to go then into the public domain and to take on such entities as, I don't know if you know I did this. I did the show Wife Swap. No, it's not what it sounds like if you're not familiar. But I did it. And I did Al Jazeera. And I did Comedy Central because I believe we must invade the culture. I believe we must go to the places where they are and talk to them like human beings. I believe that there are people out there sitting mindlessly, being those low information voters that can have that breakthrough moment. And the reason I believe this is because when I go on those shows, unlike when I comment on Fox News, unlike when I'm on Fox Business, unlike when I'm on my own shows, unlike those moments, I don't get preaching to the choir, atta girl, fan mail. I get, wow, you completely changed what I thought conservatives were. I thought you all were these mean-hearted, mean-spirited, vindictive, hate-filled people. And you call yourself a Christian and a conservative, and yet you were willing to listen to the other side. You were willing to love people who disagreed with you. So I'm not necessarily the biggest Rick Warren fan, but I will tell you this. There's a quote by Rick Warren that I love. Now, it's been attributed to Phil Robertson of Duck Dynasty, and it absolutely is not by Phil Robertson of Duck Dynasty. But that quote by Rick Warren, to me, defines so much of what is wrong with our culture today. And I really, really love when he says that. He says, our culture has believed two huge lies. The first is that if you disagree with someone's lifestyle, you must fear or hate them. The second is that to love someone means you must agree with everything they believe or do. Both are nonsense. You don't have to compromise conviction to be compassionate. I want you to repeat that after me. In your home, in your car, wherever you are, sitting in front of your computer, I want you to just repeat that one line after me. You don't have to compromise conviction to be compassionate. And you should never compromise conviction. And the Republican Party and the Democrat Party should never compromise conviction to be compassionate. See, we've bought a bill of lies in this country. It's the theocracy of political correctness that has told us that if you don't agree with me, you hate me, number one. So that makes us hateful. And that means when they go out and lay out that narrative that you're the hate monger, they can prove it again and again and again by you simply disagreeing with them. And it means that if you love someone, you get conservatives yelling at you. And it's happened to me many times. Many times have I gone into that arena and tried to love someone without compromising my convictions to be compassionate. And the hate mail I get is from whom? Whom, you ask? Conservatives. Conservatives want me to know they do not approve of my loving someone they disagree with. There are conservatives like that out there. And then we wonder why we are represented as those with a message of hate. That's why. I'll say another thing. Don't you buy into the leftist lie that we must not talk about social issues if we want to win the next election, as evidenced by the polling that says Rand Paul and Ted Cruz are at the top of the polls with who? Conservatives, who, by the way, are the base that will motivate the vote to get out there in the next election. If we don't have another force down our throat candidate, I'm not talking party here. I'm talking candidate. I'm talking conviction. I'm talking clarity of conviction. I'm talking vision for this country, this shining city on the hill. And in a strange way, that liberal dad of mine, who is an atheist, I'd say an agnostic, more so today, he taught me most of what I know about the exact things I'm talking to you about. So be careful out there, lefties. If you think you can indoctrinate someone to your views, you might be teaching them truth. Do you have that liberal in your family that you butt heads with? Tell me about it. 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840 is that number. We're going to go to your calls, filling up those phone lines right after this. Stay tuned.